Welcome to Entrepreneurial Mindset with Edith Kelly Green, owner of Kelly Green Enterprises, LLC. Former 30-year employee at FedEx, mastering corporate operations, supply chain management, logistics, and public accounting. She is a successful entrepreneur and franchisee owner of several Lenny's here in Memphis. Let's welcome Edith Kelly Green.
Okay, I'm Edith Kelly Green, and I grew up in Oxford, Mississippi with my grandmother at a challenging time in our life. The first time I knew anything about entrepreneurship was when my grandmother would wash shirts for the students on campus at the University of Mississippi. And the University of Mississippi is located in Oxford, Mississippi. Now, I didn't know that word, couldn't spell the word, couldn't pronounce the word then. But when I look back in my life, I saw how my grandmother did lots of things that allowed us to live, to have food on the table, and this washing shirts for the students on campus, washing them, ironing them, and she hand washed them too. And we did not have a washing machine, but that was her way of making money for our family. So that's how I first got introduced to entrepreneurship. Secondly, I spent most of my career at FedEx. FedEx, we all know FedEx as FedEx is now, but I started at FedEx in 1977. The company was about 4 years old, and it was started by Fred Smith, who would be considered definitely an entrepreneur. And why I'm working in corporate America, it was a corporate environment, we all there, I'd say most of the people there had an entrepreneur mindset because we were a small company, we'd just gotten started, we were struggling, everybody did whatever needed to be done to try to make the company work, and we all bought into Fred Smith's idea on this new company. So that also formed my mindset of what entrepreneurship is. And then thirdly, I think everybody is an entrepreneur and certainly can be an entrepreneur, but I think we're all entrepreneurs as we try to think about ways to do things differently, ways that we can make money, ways that we can provide service to other people. It's a mindset, and I think most people have that. Sometimes we may not know to draw on that. We don't know that we're being entrepreneurs, but we are.
As a leader, when creating a culture for your team, this module suggests one of accountability and ownership. The mindset and the attitude of your team should be one where everyone is empowered to lead their respected roles. What's the difference in an entrepreneur and an employee? Listen at Edith shares.
Well, the biggest difference between having an employee mindset versus the mindset of an owner, in my opinion, is understanding that the harder you work as an owner, the more results you're going to get, the more return you're going to get. Those with employee mindsets know that regardless of whether I work 8 hours, or I may physically be here 8 hours, but regardless of what I do, I'm still going to get paid. So there's not a lot of motivation, in my opinion, from employees versus that of owners. As an owner, I know that if I don't do what I need to do, I'm not going to make the money that's going to be needed to pay employees, to pay the rent, to pay for the input for the product that I'm serving. And in this case, it's restaurants. I'm not going to be able to pay for the food and whatever goes into making that sandwich, for example, that the customer is going to purchase. And it's always a struggle to find employees with an owner's mindset or the idea that I too can be an owner. But I also think that everybody has an ownership or an owner's mindset deep within if only they will just look at it and also just explore the opportunities that being an owner can bring versus being an employee.
Create future leaders by encouraging critical thinking that allows your team to ask questions about the business, listen to earnings calls, share top-down objectives, and make your team understand how their role fits into the company's mission and vision. Let's listen to Edith and hear what her business acumens are.
As I said, I grew up in Oxford, Mississippi. I went to high school there, and the University of Mississippi is there. So I went to the University of Mississippi, and in my first summer session, I declared a major in accounting. Now, I assure you, I could not spell accounting when I was in high school. I knew nothing about accounting. I did not grow up in a family that knew what the Wall Street Journal was or what books were, or even taxes, because my grandmother never made enough money to pay taxes. But somehow I ended up in accounting. And accounting and that business background is what provided a certain mindset for me. And how does that translate into being an entrepreneur? Many entrepreneurs, if not most entrepreneurs, have a great idea. They may be able to bake the best muffin in town. They may be able to sew the best dress. So they have a skill or they have an idea, but they don't like doing the financial side or the administrative sides. So my background made me comfortable with finance, with accounting, with taxes, and knowing that I have to pay my taxes. You do not want to be an entrepreneur and forget that, hey, I got to pay my payroll taxes, or forget that the IRS can come in at any point and shut you down. So in my case, having that financial background is important. It makes me comfortable with the business side of it, as well as just also understanding how businesses should operate. I worked out of college for a public accounting firm, Deloitte & Touche, so that also gave me exposure to many different organizations too. And I left Deloitte & Touche and went to work for FedEx. And I was at FedEx for the majority of my career. Actually only had 2 jobs in my career prior to becoming an entrepreneur. And at FedEx I had the opportunity to see operations, a lot in finance, had exposure to publishing and manufacturing. So all of those things kind of came together as we set out to create our family business, which is owning and operating restaurants.
As a leader, get involved in how and where recruitment is done, the hiring process, onboarding, and even training. After all, you'll be leading the team, and it's important for you to know how to engage and empower your team. Here are Edith's key components to building her team.
The kind of people that we look for on our team, and managers, they could be managers or hourly employees. We kind of look for the same people. So starting with the hourly employees, I'm looking for somebody who wants to be a manager, who doesn't see being on my team as an hourly employee as their lifelong goal. Somebody who wants to move up in the organization. So that means they've got to have aspirations, they've got to be ambitious, and they also understand that in order to move up, I've got to stand out from other people. I've got to do perhaps a little bit more. I've got to understand what the goals are. I've got to have an entrepreneurial mind. I also need to be concerned about the numbers. One of the other things that entrepreneurs sometimes forget, as well as employees, that sales can be great, but if the money doesn't get in the bank, then it doesn't matter, because we don't have the cash. We've got to have the cash. So I want somebody who's concerned about the overall business, but also a service-oriented person, because we're serving customers all the time, what we call guests. And when we started this restaurant business, we look at our motto of EGO: employees, guests, and owners. And actually that's analogous to what I spent 25 years doing at FedEx, whose philosophy is people, service, profit. So with EGO, we first try to hire the best employees that we can hire. And again, those employees are service-oriented, they have high integrity, they have empathy, they have actually probably a smaller ego than that of their guests, and that's sometimes hard to find. They have leadership aspirations, as I said before. So that would be some of the things. The integrity, though, is of utmost importance. Same thing for managers. Managers have to separate themselves a bit from employees, though, and sometimes it's difficult to have managers who don't identify with employees and can identify with, hey, it's my responsibility to do the right thing, regardless of whether I socialize with this employee or whether I like this employee or don't like this employee. So there are a myriad of attributes you look for when you're hiring someone, but I would say integrity is my number one aspect that I'm looking for in an employee.
Do you have a detailed strategy for your team? Have you even thought about what your strategic attributes should look like for you as an entrepreneur or as a part of a leadership team? Let's listen at Edith Kelly Green as she shares with us her strategy for her restaurants.
The strategy in building our business, which again is restaurants primarily, we do have some real estate investments too as part of our family business. But with restaurants, coming into this with the financial background, as I've also mentioned, was important, was key. So secondly, you've got to have the right employees. And that is a struggle, particularly now. It's a struggle to find employees who want to work, who can work. I never looked for employees who wanted to camp out here at Lenny's or Stage Left forever. I wanted employees who were ambitious and wanted to move on, because that meant they were going to do things differently. They were going to work harder. If they saw a piece of paper on the floor, they weren't going to step over it. They were going to pick that piece of paper up. So, but the strategy is having satisfied guests in our case. That's the G of the ego. Because if we take care of our guests, and in order to take care of our guests, we got to take care of our employees. We got to have good employees, and they'll take care of the guests. Because I'm not in these restaurants every day. I know how I like the business to be run, but it's the employees, the frontline employees, who have to run the business that way. So employees will take care of the guests, and if the guests are happy, they're going to come back and they're going to provide the sales, which translates into profits that will allow us to reward the employees, who will take care of the guest, who will create the profits that will allow us as owners to get our return out of it. Because as an entrepreneur, I mean, we may love what we do, but everybody invests in a business because we're looking for a return. That we think this is the best way to get a return on our money. We think that might be better than investing in the stock market. So we invest in our business, and so that's a great way to get a return on our investments. So another key that I had mentioned here is the ability to compensate our employees fairly. We want our employees to have financial wherewithal to be able to go to school if that's why they're working here, or to be able to provide for their families too. So the way to do that, great employees who take care of the guests who take care of the profit goes back to, is shared with the employees and the owners.